Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everybody. I should change the shot. I'm way up there in the corner. Welcome, everyone, to a fresh episode of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and we've got a great show because we are going to talk about the NFL Draft, Ryan Post picks, and we're going to focus a lot of day 3, but we're going to answer your questions. We're going to have fun. Let me bring in the man, the myth, the marauder, the monster of the Midway himself, Greg Gabriel.
What are you making up words here or what? The marauder? I never heard of that before. Did you make that one up?
I think I did.
Or is that an actual word in the dictionary? I don't know.
I may have made it up. Who knows? How are you, Greg Gabriel? How are you feeling this Monday morning, May 1st?
I'm still tired from the weekend, but that's okay.
I hear you. Did you get a chance to go out there and work out this morning?
Yes, I did. Yesterday morning and this morning. I went a little later today. I went at left at about 6:15. I usually leave, half hour earlier, but got a good workout in.
Oh, good. Good to hear. I got my workout into an extra hour of sleep. So, listen, I have got to tell you that the draft grades are out.
Don't even talk about it, because that is the most ridiculous thing.
Oh my gosh.
I started seeing stuff, winners of day 1, winners of day 2, winners of day 3. Nobody knows who won. Mm-hmm. A year from now, you can say so-and-so won, but you're not going to know now. Right. And a lot of it, it's based on what the people who write the article know about the player, and they aren't football people, Mm-hmm. So, to me, it's clickbait. I get it. Readers want to know about it, but it means absolutely nothing. And there are so many times during the course of my career where I have read how poor our draft was, mm-hmm. only to have a really good one.
But just as I say that, somebody posted their grade. Jimmy posted a grade C+. But I got to tell you, Greg, because this one really, really went up my butt and just, oh my goodness, it made me so angry. One of the writers over at the Athletic, and they have great writers over there. It's one of my favorite digital publications. But one of the writers graded the Bears first round and gave it a D-. A D- for selecting Darnell Wright because the Bears defensive line needed more attention than the offensive line. Oh, it was so frustrating.
Okay, now see, this is what I mean. You got non-football people who don't know what the hell they're talking about writing an article and putting a grade out when this guy didn't have a clue that after the tackles in the first round, there weren't any. Mm-hmm. And where the Bears were picking in the second round, there were a couple that you could, go iffy on, and one for sure, and that was Matthew Bergeron, and he was gone. I think he was gone before the Bears picked in the second. Mm-hmm. So don't give me that stuff. And they had him. They swear they had him number one. Number one offensive lineman.
Right. They
probably did, but there's at least 2 teams that had Paris Johnson as number one. One was Arizona, and the other one was the Raiders, if you read Peter King's column this morning. But there could have been others too. I don't know. But, everybody looks at players differently. They're ranked differently. I've said this 1,000 times. You could go into 32 rooms and you're going to see the order of the players totally different.
Yep.
They're going to look at him differently. It's what about the player do you like the best, and does he fit what you're doing? You know, let's take DeJuan Johnson. Oh, by the way, I'm glad he went a lot later because that was the most overrated player in the draft. He is stiff, real stiff, has no bend whatsoever, and he's got to play in a. If he can't play in a certain type of offense, he can't play. Period.
Right. DeJuan Jones, right?
Right. DeJuan Jones, rather. Excuse me.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I know that our Brian Poe Hort, Jordan Severa has developed a friendship with him and likes the way he plays and so forth. But the reality is that has injury concerns. He's so huge. He's just absolutely
Can't
not.
move.
But
Can't
yeah,
move. Can't move and he can't bend. And
right.
at that position, you better be able to bend.
Game Book World says, "Hey, Aldo, tell that writer I get their D hanging low." All right, already some really great questions. Let me go to a couple of them, and I promise to try to get to all of your questions on this episode. Shower Beer asks, Greg, how different are the profiles of these interior linemen from those you picked for Lovey's Tampa 2? And what does that say about Eberflus's version of the system? Shower Beer, that is a great question.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this on Saturday morning, and it seems as if now, when I had a conversation with Ryan Poles, he said that their profile, our profile and his profile were pretty close. But it seems that since then, they've changed it a little bit. They wanted a little more size. You know, they still got the athleticism, so they didn't throw out that, but they got a little more girth. And I think part of it was because they were just so poor against the run last year. And so what's going to get down to is every single one of these guys are going to be over 300 pounds. Now, you're not going to have a guy 320 or 330, but they're going to be between 300 and 310. Zach Pickens was 292 at the combine, but he played about 10 pounds heavier than that at South Carolina. And if you listen to what Ryan said after they picked him, day 2, he said, you know, we're real big on body composition, muscle mass, lean weight, etc. Same as body fat percentage that I use, but we're just using a different term. He said he'll probably be somewhere in between when it's all said and done. And they're going to give a little bit more leeway to rookies than they are with veterans because they're new to the program. And it's not something that you can change overnight. Turn your mic on.
Help. It really does help when the microphone is on and working. Mike Gibson, you just sort of answered Mike's question here. He asked, Gervin Dixon is the most interesting player to me, partly because he wasn't on my radar as a fit. After listening to Ryan Post, I can understand what he was thinking. What do you think, Greg? You just mentioned about girth and athleticism.
Well, the main thing I had with him going in, talking from the negative, and I really don't like talking negatives. I'd rather talk positives. You know me. Is that he's a little late off the ball, and I don't think, where he made some wow plays, you didn't see enough. So you're expecting a little more because the talent's there. But what I didn't know, and I should have by watching the tape, is that their scheme is not an attack scheme. It's a read and react scheme. It's actually played more like a 3-4 in that, often he's head up and he's two gapping the guy in front of him. And his job was really to control players and keep them off the linebackers and then get penetration, where in this defense, it's fire off the ball, get penetration and disrupt. So he's going to play a whole different role here. And when you look at his athleticism and his testing numbers, that's going to play in well to his natural skill set.
And one of the things that he said when he met the media is that he felt like he was not ever really coached when he was down at Florida, that he had no real
He
coaching.
threw his coach under the bus.
He sure did.
and I don't know who the line coach is, but that was a first-year staff. And, they may have had a guy that was good at University of Louisiana, but not as strong to move up to the Power Five. I don't know that, but he's going to have good coaching here. And he's going to have to learn to get off the ball better. And that's part of it's concentration. Part of it's just watching the damn ball. You see the ball snap, you move. Don't react to the guy in front of you. React to the ball. Have your head cocked a little bit. And when the ball moves, you move. He's a good player. You could take his wild plays and you could take Jalen Carter's wild plays, because Jalen Carter, regardless of what anybody wants to say, there's a lot of plays Jalen Carter took off. And you know what? They're going to look very, very similar.
Exactly. Now, I'll tell you this. If I was writing for some website or whatever, and a publisher told me, hey, write an article and grade this draft, I might give it an A+. And the reason why is because we acquired DJ Moore. We added draft picks for 2024, including a first rounder, and 2025. Those things all have to be accounted for when looking at how Ryan Poles handled this draft, in particular because there was no consensus in my mind. There was no consensus real number one pick. It's not like we gave away Peyton Manning in this deal. We gave away a quarterback who is not a shoo-in to be a great NFL quarterback. What do you think?
You're correct. And I don't know. Did you read Peter King's column this morning?
No, I missed it this morning.
Read it. It's really good. He was in the Raiders draft room, and he always gets into somebody's draft room.
That's cool.
For day one. And he was in the Raiders, and they, they were praying going into the draft. We got to have, to get who we want, they had a list of 4 guys. We got to get one of our 4. We got to have 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4, which is exactly what happened. The surprise was, and somebody said, somebody tweeted me today that, oh, yeah, you were stupid enough to say that Stroud wasn't going to Houston at 2. Well, up until about 1 or 2 days before the draft, Stroud wasn't going at 2. That was a lock, and everybody in the league had it. What happened is the owner stepped in. In fact, I got a text. I might have gave you a heads up. I don't remember, on Thursday. I got a text, I'm going to say about 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. Said it's going to be Stroud, and the owner's getting his wish. And it's and what happened? So that's what really encouraged the trade at 3, because Caserio wanted his edge player, and so they both won. They had a lot of draft picks, so they were able to give up some capital in order to move up with Arizona to get to the 3rd pick, and they both won. But for some idiot out there in Twitter land to say, I didn't know what I was talking about, he's crazy.
By the way,
he doesn't realize that I'm infallible. I'm like the Pope, but that's okay.
By the way, I stand corrected, and thank you, Vince, for correcting me. It was Zach Pickens who said that the coaching was shoddy, and so I apologize. That's my second mistake. If I get one more, Greg, then I'm out of here. I'm done. Somebody else come on in and take my place.
3 strikes and you're out. Somebody may throw you a couple balls and you'll be able to walk, but
let's hope. I need a good walk, by the way. I've been stuck in here for the last week. All right, let's talk about the draft. I've got tons of great questions, and I will continue to collect them. But let's get into specific players, starting with the first pick on round 4, Roschon Johnson, the running back out of Texas. Your thoughts?
I honestly believe that was highest player on the board. Not that, and when you listen to the comments by Ryan, it was like where he was sitting on their board, he was too good to pass up. And I don't remember if we talked about him Saturday morning or not, but he was like my number one guy on the running back list. And when we did the thing for the Patreon, I was glowing about him. This guy's a bitch. I mean, he's a big running back. He timed 4.57, which you go, that's not very good. Even though the number one running back in NFL history, Emmitt Smith, ran a 4.7. But he plays a lot faster, and he's got loose hips. He's elusive. He can make jump cuts like Matt Forte made jump cuts. He's big. He's powerful. He's a punishing runner. Got great hands. Can pass block. There's nothing he can't do. I saw somebody tweet out, I don't remember who it was, don't be surprised if he's RB1 by the middle of the season. And that wouldn't shock me, but I think, what they want to do in the league right now is nobody wants a true bell cow. You want a 3-man rotation to keep guys fresh. And so, and they brought in Donta Foreman, who's got a specific skill set. He runs pretty good. Donta Foreman was a sub 4.5 at 230 pounds coming out. He can run, and he's a punishing runner. Hasn't been used that much as a receiver. Khalil Herbert, we know what he can do as a runner. Not a real good pass blocker. He can improve that. That's on him. And he's not a real good receiver, which you can also improve, but that's one part. You either got good hands or you don't. I mean, he can catch 150 balls a day for the jugs machine, but that doesn't mean he's going to improve his hands. This guy's a great receiver. And the guy, Travis Homer, that they picked up from Seattle in free agency, also a very good receiver. So what I see in that group is a combination of size, speed, power, that complement each other. Each guy has a little bit different skill set.
Yeah. It's tools for Luke Getsy's offense. I love what Sam Rush writes here. He says that Johnson can do a lot of things well. Now, he was timed at 4.57, but he clocked on GPS at 22.5 miles in a game this season. Why do you think that happens, Greg, that sometimes guys are like jacked and they, look faster on tape than they do when they're running 40s on the combine? I see you smiling. So what's going on?
It's because you know what it gets down to?
Doing
what they never do, and that's come out of a crouch 3-point stance or 4-point stance, and coming out of the blocks.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole, running backs play on their feet. Years ago, when I was first years playing football, not at the end of college, and when I was playing minor league football, running backs used to have their hand in the dirt. Nobody does that anymore. But the fullback used to for a while, and now nobody has a fullback. And even the ones that do are the guys usually standing up. So, but I think part of it with some of these guys is that they just are poor starters when they get in that stance. And or you might rise up a little bit too fast. But what the GPS does is the GPS tells you how fast you're running at full speed. Okay, so you could take, if you get the metrics, take his 10 to 40 and his 20 to 40 speed and see what that is as compared to some of these guys that ran in the 4.4s. I guarantee you it's going to be, measure out pretty well and pretty close to those guys who are supposedly speedsters. Because when you watch him tape, dude can run.
Yeah, he can. He can indeed. All right, let's get to the next pick of day 3, and that was wide receiver Tyler Scott, Cincinnati. I've looked at a few publications, and a lot of people saying this might be the steal of day 3 by any team. Your thoughts on Tyler Scott from Cincinnati?
I don't know if I'd call it a steal, and I'll tell you why. First of all, he's a clone to Darnell Mooney. When you look at height, weight, the measurables, just the raw measurables, he ran low 4.4s at the combine, ran 4.37 at his pro day. Let's round it off. He's a 4.40 guy, but he plays faster than that. Mooney was a 4.37 or a 4.38. They're the same height. They're about the same weight. Mooney's a couple pounds lighter. Mooney's arms are maybe an inch and a half longer. But a lot of their game is similar. Where Mooney is better in college, as you can go back and the people want to look at it, just go back and find, there's highlights of him from Tulane on YouTube you can look at. Mooney had a larger receiving radius where a Tyler Scott, he's not catching the ball in here. And when he's facing the ball, he can go up like this and get it. But a lot of times you see him wait and he's catching the ball in here instead of going out like this. Okay. That's another coaching point. Get him to do it. I forgot to look at the size of his hands. Mooney's got big hands. He's got like 9.5-inch hands for a little guy. I don't know what this guy's hand size is, but I'm not saying he's not going to be a good receiver. I think they got him where he should have been taken, and I like it. And he's another home run threat, and he's a guy that consistently gets separation. That's what Poles wanted to improve on. He got it. DJ Moore, that's what he got. He got a separator, and he got a separator here because he said, I need another guy, at least one guy to go along with what Mooney can do, and that's separate. He didn't have those types of guys. And so now he's got three of them. And he said it when he was telling me this, he said, kind of like Pettis, but better. And so in DJ and this guy, he got better.
By the way, his hands are 9-inch hands. And I just wanted to check his,
which is fine. But Tyreek Hill's got like 8.5.
Yeah. 4.37 on the 40, 1.50 on that 10-yard split. Dane Brugler who writes The Beast over at The Athletic had him targeted as a second-round pick right after Josh Downs and right before Cedric Tillman. So that's some pretty good company there.
Right. And I'm going to say this, going back to, because I think he is very similar to Mooney type of play. And go back to when Mooney was drafted in 2020. Okay, that was the COVID year. The first of for the draft, there was 2 COVID years, but 20 was where 20 they had the combine. And after the combine, everything was shut down. So you could Zoom, and you didn't even have a lot of Zooms, but you had no private workouts, no pro days. And so, there's a lot of guessing going on. So Mooney being a, slight build guy, he got hurt by that. Had there been pro days and private workouts in that year, he's not going to the 5th round because he's just too impressive.
Right.
Okay, so he was hurt by that, but, now he's 1 year away or even now from getting a second contract, and you're going to see what his real value is.
What do you think about Bears fan Goomba asking if he's a good comp to Johnny Knox? You know Johnny very well. What do you think?
Johnny was taller and thinner. Johnny was, I used this the other day talking about that guy, Emmanuel Forbes, the corner from Mississippi State.
Yes.
Well, that was Johnny. Here we go. There's his body. There's his body. Johnny is very, very, very narrow. Very thin wrists, thin ankles, thin hips, thin everything. But what he was flexible, very flexible. And if it wasn't for that flexible, that hit he took might have killed him.
Yes, that was one of the most horrific things I ever saw. The way his body bent. Oh gosh, just the thought of it is
bent backwards like a pretzel.
Yep, indeed. All right, let's go on to the next pick of that day in round 5. A really intriguing pick. The kid out of Oregon, linebacker Noel Sewell. He had an outstanding 2021 season, and then in 2022, all of a sudden, production fell off dramatically. What have you heard about this guy? Was he too much into his head or anything like that? Your evaluation on the linebacker.
I didn't do a lot of linebackers, but I've talked to people who did. I haven't talked to anybody that doesn't like this guy. He's instinctive. He's physical. He runs well. You know, he plays like the new breed linebacker does. You know, the days of the 6'4", 250-pound guy, and we just signed one as a Mike in free agency and got a lot of money, but he runs a 4.5. But those guys used to be 4.8 guys, and you know, big behemoths that could control between the tackles, but didn't have the range to get outside. And now the type of linebackers that everybody's looking for is an athletic, fast, great body control linebacker that can play in coverage. And that's what this guy does.
Yeah.
You know, and he's going to be, while he's waiting his turn, because in this defense now, given that they're playing 75-80% of the time they're playing in sub, there's only going to be 2 linebackers on the field. You know, him and Sanborn are going to probably be the Sam linebackers on base downs. You know, which one wins, that remains to be seen. But you know, they're going to do a really good job on special teams, and Noah could very well be a backup Will too. He's got that kind of skill set. So, you know, they signed the kid from Philadelphia. I think he only got a 2-year contract, and he's a little bit older. I think he's about 28. So, you know, maybe this guy's going to step into that spot in 2 years. You know, you never know. But it's an interesting guy, and where they got him, the talent's too good to say no. But I want to go back to one thing I wanted to touch on, because there's been a lot of stuff where they didn't get a pass rusher. Well, you know, I've been in, 34, 35 draft rooms. And you work hard setting up that board. You got needs. You go in and say, we got to get this, 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 and this. You don't get this, 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 and this. You maybe get this, this, and this, you know, and you don't get the fourth. And that's what happened here. And remember, we talked it on one of these, and then on the one of the Patreon shows about the averages, number of players that go. Well, okay, edge players average going back 6, 7, 8 years in the first round is 5. 7 went in the first round. The average over 2 rounds is 8. 11 went in the first 2 rounds. And all 11 of those went before the Bears had their first, second round pick. It wasn't going to happen. It just didn't fall that way. You know, so, and that happens sometimes. It was a pretty good class. And so for that reason, I think that whether it's this week or next week, maybe it's today, for all I know, that there's going to be a veteran brought in. And you know, Paul said that. He just didn't say it totally. He goes, well, there's options we can do. And if we got to spend some money, we got the money to do it. Well, what was he telling you?
Yeah, right.
Now they got to find somebody who wants to make a deal. And then everybody, I think half of Chicago Bear Twitter got all up in arms, riling up because Yannick Ngakoue had a 1-word cryptic tweet. Said coming. I don't know if you saw it. And
yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, so it's like, oh, he's close to a contract. Where's he going? He's probably playing with your head is what he's doing.
He's probably having sex. Or...
No, he's still with ING.
By the way, Michael Halatek, CJ Williams, and Swifty is in the house. All are asking, can Sewell become a situational pass rusher?
No.
Why?
He's too short. First of all, look at his sack numbers in college. They aren't very good.
Mm-hmm.
He's an off-the-ball linebacker. He's too short, and he's got 31 and a half, 31 and three-quarter inch arms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just doesn't have the arm length to be an outside pass rusher. I mean, I'm sure that once they get into camp, they'll try it just to see.
Mm-hmm.
But the body says, no, I'm not going to totally count it out. But when you look at his numbers he had at Oregon, and you look at his body type, and it just says, no, that isn't going to happen.
Interesting. Okay. Let us move on now to the next pick of that round. And I'm sure people are going to comment on that Sewell not being a pass rusher. So we might get back to that.
Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you, I was watching the pass rushers carefully. There wasn't any there.
Mm-hmm.
They were gone. So, you can forget about it. And here's what you can't do. You can't say, well, I'm going to take a guy here. We haven't got one yet. I'm going to get one. Mm-hmm. But that guy is 2 levels below grade-wise than the guy you're looking at. That defeats the purpose of all the work you've done for months putting together the board.
Yep, indeed.
That goes against drafting philosophy.
Yeah.
That a lot of teams pick for need, but and Peter King mentioned it in this column today, and it's like I've been saying too. Best player available is a myth. And I say that not because people pick for need, it's because everybody's board is different. So best player available according to who? Mel Kiper. Well, is Mel Kiper's board going to be the same as the Chicago Bears?
Right.
And is the Chicago Bears going to be the same as the Green Bay Packers or whatever? It's they're all different. 31 names went in the first round, and I would be willing to bet right now that if you put all the different draft boards together, you probably have between 40 and 45 names. In the first round.
That's a real interesting point, in that maybe these draft evaluators should offer multiple draft boards for different teams' needs. So, for instance,
well, they never do. They're very generic, and they got to
be.
It'd be too hard for them to get into schemes, and that's a ton of work. Just understanding one scheme, letting alone 32.
Yeah.
And what you're looking for. So they can't. So they're more generic.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
So it's just, I don't see they could do it. Some guys say, when you read their reports, that this guy would be better in this type of scheme than in this type of scheme. And that's fine. At least he mentions it. But to set their board, they're, like I said, they're like the combine scouts who give the teams very generic grades because they're scouting for all the teams in either Bledsoe or National Scouting.
Okay. All right. Back to our selections here in round 5. Pick 165 was cornerback Terrell Smith out of Minnesota. I know you looked at him. Your thoughts on this acquisition? That
was one of my favorite picks in this draft. He was at the East West. First of all, I did him early for Mike and really liked him. And people want to say, who's Mike? Mike is Mike McCartney, the agent.
Right.
And who a lot of times gets blamed for being Mike McCarthy, the coach. If you watch Twitter. Now, he hasn't the last year because he changed his pitcher, but I mean, he would get. Did you ever see that stuff? I mean, he'd get like, Coach, what are you doing tweaked in the middle of the game?
Hilarious.
And then he'll answer. I mean, he plays into it. Well, I had nothing better to do. Sitting on the sideline. I let my coaches do the coaching. I just watched.
I love it.
So he was, and I, am on the board for the East-West game. So I recommended him highly to Eric Galko. And we got him in the game, and he was one of the best players during the week. He had a great week of practice. And in fact, I was shocked that he lasted to the 5th round because this guy, he's got size. He's over 6 feet tall. He's 200 pounds. He can run. He can jump. He'll hit. He's got ball skills. He had 2 picks one day in practice. Just a really good player.
What do you think about Showbeer's question here? He said that both of the corners drafted were said to have press man cover skills. How does that fit within the scheme compared to corners that are classic zone cover guys?
Well, we've said this 1,000 times. They don't play nearly as much zone as the name of the scheme says. They're playing a lot of press. They're playing zone, yeah, but they play a lot of press. And colleges don't put as much responsibility on their kids as pro teams do, especially on defense. They don't have the time to work with the kids like a pro team does. And, you know, they got that 20-hour-a-week rule, and that includes meetings. You know, spring practice used to be, you know, like 24 to 30 practices. Now it's 14 or something. Everything's cut down. I think it's ridiculous sometimes. But, you know, they might play 2 main coverages in college. You do see them play some zone. You see both of them play zone. You see both of them play press man. But if you can get a good press man guy, it's a win because they're hard to find. It's a lot easier for a guy, you know, you can get a Rondé Barber, who's a great corner for Tampa, Tiki's twin brother, who we had in New York. Rondé couldn't play press in his life. You know, he wasn't fast enough. He wasn't big enough. But in zone, he could do it, and he was great in zone. And he played in this thing, Tampa too, but at that time, they were playing a lot of zone because they didn't have corners who could play press. When you got corners who can play press, that's a win because it allows you to control things a lot better.
Physical corners, extremely physical, Sam Rush says. That's going to be nice. Bring back the Peanut Tillman days. All right, let's get to our next player. We didn't have a pick in the 6th round, and Mr. Shorty is dying to hear what you think about Travis Bell from Kennesaw State. First of all, can you tell us where Kennesaw State is?
Georgia.
Awesome. I did not know that. I should have looked it up.
And it's one of the few schools I've never been to. And I'm pretty sure it's in Georgia. Now watch, it's probably in Alabama.
Okay, I'll go check.
You know what? The next tape I watch on him will be the first. I got nothing on him, and I got all the tape. You know, I got to see if Galco can send me some Kennesaw tape. I did watch. It's on YouTube. There's an interview of him, and it's a good 15 minutes long.
I saw that.
Did you see it? It was actually for game day. What an impressive kid! And you know, he's a 5 or 6 year guy, so he's going to be but he's already graduated. He graduated back in 2020. You know, he's got his degree, but he kept playing. Short, 6 feet tall, 310 pounds. He's got long arms for 6 feet tall. He's got 32.5-inch arms. And so, and arm length is relative to how tall you are. 32.5-inch arms are long on a 6 foot guy. Strong as an ox. He did 30 reps, but he's real big in the lower body. Runs well, ran a 5 flat. I know Poles was really excited about him just listening to him. You know, he goes, I didn't want to let him go home, you know, which is that tells you something. So, I'm kind of interested in seeing what this guy can do. I mean, he's obviously a one tech, and maybe because he played at Kennesaw State, which is a, you know, lower level of comp, he might need a year on the practice squad. But, you know, one thing, he's going to give you effort. And he is a very physical type football player, from what I understand.
Yep. And I just want to say on Saturday's draft coverage, when Bell was selected, we poked a little fun at the selection, and some of the people who are watching were upset that we were kind of crapping on Travis Bell's dream, and that wasn't the intention. We were punch drunk, very tired, not to make excuses, but we were wrong in doing that, and we apologized during that show, and I just want to apologize again.
Did you look where Kennesaw State's from? Did you look?
Yes, it is from Georgia, which
okay, I knew I was right.
And Swifty confirms, and that's also where Justin Fields is from. So there's a connection there. Okay, let's talk about this kid from Stanford, the safety, Kendall Williamson. I know nothing about him.
I didn't do anything on him till last night because that was a guy, down the road guy, did some stuff last night. Actually, he's pretty instinctive and physical. Runs really well. Wish he had more interceptions. Stanford the last couple of years had a lousy team, which you can't blame him. But he's already graduated, so he's smart coming out of Stanford. Very, very athletic, runs well, jumps. I mean, his athletic numbers are rare. Didn't go to the combine. Now, that brings up another thing. So their last two picks were non-combine guys. And so you go, well, how do you know about some of these guys that weren't go to the combine? Well, first of all, every year, 35 to 40 non-combine guys get drafted. Okay, there was 324, 325 guys invited to the combine. There was 259 drafted this year because they had more compensatory picks because of guys getting head coaching jobs, minorities getting head coaching jobs or GM jobs. So that picked it up a few picks. But so right off the bat, you got 60 something guys who go to the combine who aren't getting drafted, just based on the numbers. Then you add the 35 to 40 that are non-combine guys that are going to get drafted. Now, really, the real number is about 100. Almost 1/3 of the guys that go to the combine don't get drafted. So it's no lock that you're getting drafted, just getting invited to the combine. Now, what happens is, they got these pro days, and you can't hit all of them. It's impossible because it's basically a 4-week window to get these things done. They start like the week right after in fact, actually this year, the combine, it ends on Monday. And then the final workout's on Sunday, but that last group had to do all their lifting and stuff on Monday, and pro days started Thursday of that week. And then they went up all the way till around the 30th of March. So just a few weeks ago. Sometimes there's 7 or 8 in one day. Okay. You just can't get to all of them. So what you do is all of them are taped. You get the tape. And then there's this thing called the APT. And that came around, I'm going to say 2003. And it was Kansas City at the time. And Chuck Cook was the college director. Was his idea. And it was like, hey, we can't get to all these things. Why don't we get together as a group and assign half a dozen schools to each team? And so they have to send a scout to that pro day, get all the just for the measurables. It's up to the team. The team themselves have got to order the video of the tape, because usually you got to pay $100 for it. That's a little extra change for the video director. That $100 gets $3,000 to do those things. But anyway, that you send a scout. He gets all the stuff: the 10, the 20, the 40, the long jump, vertical jump, 20 shuttle, 3 cone, everything, all the measurable stuff. And it goes out. Okay, I get those. The team sends me that. It's a 780-page document this year with all the stuff. and it comes that you get stuff literally every day because, if I was at a pro day today, it gets sent in and out to the other teams by the next day. Okay. You're looking at that stuff, especially if you didn't have a guy there. And so you're looking for guys that really jump out numbers wise.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, this kid from Stanford, Kendall Williams, and Travis Bell had really, really good numbers. So it just said, wait a minute, we got to do some more work on these guys. Maybe you don't know what their grade was coming out of the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see the numbers, and the numbers are better than a lot of guys that were at the combine, you've got to go back, especially if they are fits for your scheme. You got to go back and look at these guys. And that's how it ends up seeing some of these guys getting drafted. A lot of times it's because of the APT, and they had a really strong pro day.
That's fantastic. I did not know about that.
Yeah,
all right,
there was a guy. This goes back. I can't remember the guy's name. It was a safety from it's either Ohio U or Miami of Ohio, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So he had an early pro day and was just off the chart numbers. So we sent in our DB coach to work him out. I think at that time it was John Hoke, and who's back with the Bears now. He comes back, glowing report. So we did more research, brought him in on one of the 30 visits, and we thought, if he's there in it was the third or fourth round, we might pull the trigger. I don't remember the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of our coaches, and I'm not going to mention his name. This is why you don't want too much information getting out to too many people. Mentioned it to a coaching friend of his with another club that we had a lot of interest in this guy.
Oh boy!
And guess what? That other club took him. Now they took him too high. They took him in the second, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And but that just tells you, when you got guarded secrets, you want them kept guarded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A big part of what happens at Halisaw is making sure things stay secret over there.
Right.
Let's tackle some of these questions. We've got quite a few of them. Dennis asks, why didn't they like Northwestern's Adetamiwa Adebore? I
don't have the answer.
Do you?
I think part of it had to do with they've changed. It seems like they changed the profile a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Want a little bigger guy, and so I thought maybe they could have taken him in the fourth. He was still there, and going into day three, they had the first pick in the fourth. But remember that morning I said they're going to get a half a dozen calls for this pick because of it. And, they ended up trading it before the draft had even started. So he went then, they traded down from 1 down to about 14 or something like that, or 13. I think they traded down 12 spots. He went in that area. So
Gotcha.
Could they have taken him at that had they stayed? Yeah, they could have. But they already had taken 2 inside guys. I didn't see him as an edge. His number said edge. I said, no, he's a 3. But, just from what they signed in free agency and what they did in the draft, like I said, and I'm going to have to talk to Ryan about this, is that they've changed the profile, not a lot, but they've changed the profile some along the defensive line. And probably a lot of it had to do with the way the defense played last year. They just said, you know what, we got to get a little different kind of player in here.
Right. Worst run defense in the National Football League, I believe, or close to it. Two-part Two-parter here. Squeegee says, now that all the smoke has cleared, what do you think that the Bears might do in terms of getting some additional help at the edge? And then Sophisticated Thought says, I honestly think ex-Bear Leonard Floyd would probably be the best pass rushing fit. I would like to add, personally, just don't know if his asking price and age is something Poles would consider. You've talked about Floyd to the Bears. Update us on your thoughts.
He'd be my number one guy. The way he was used at LA is similar to the way they use outside guys here. Not totally. He still dropped a little bit, but not too often. But for the most part, he was a pure edge guy, albeit standing up most of the time. But I've seen a lot of plays where he had his hand in the dirt too. He's only about 243, 245 on a 6'5.5" frame, but he's strong. And the best part is he's not missed a game in the last 5 seasons. And then the next best part is in the last 3 seasons after he left here, which were best 3 seasons as an NFL player, he's had 29.5 sacks, which is pretty damn good number.
Very good.
And then the other analytical stat, which means a lot to me, if you compare him to all the other guys that are available, he played more too. He played about 85% of the snaps over the 3 years. 1 year he played 90. So that tells you what they thought of the guy.
Yeah.
The one number, and Ngakoue would be the next guy. And Ngakoue is a pure pass rusher. He's younger. Leonard's going to be 31 in beginning of September. So on opening day, he might still be 30 on opening day, but by the second game, he's 31. And Ngakoue's 28. His last 3 seasons have been pretty productive as far as pass rusher. He has played, people say he's a situational guy. Well, in fact, it was last night. I looked it up. Last year, he played 72% of the downs.
Wow.
So, I mean, he's playing a heavy – everybody's rotating now.
Right.
But he's playing a high percentage of downs. The least I saw with him was somewhere in the 60s. To me, those would be the top 2, and the next guy would be Dwayne Smoot. But Smoot, his best year, Smoot plays the run better and he rushes the passer. He's an athletic guy, went to the University of Illinois. I think his best year, 6 or 7 sacks. Maybe had 5 last year. But now his percentage of plays is a lot lower. Actually, if you look at a sack count versus the percentage of plays he plays, it's pretty damn good. And he's athletic, he's tall, and he runs pretty well. But he just doesn't have the numbers that Leonard and Ngakoue have. Regardless, I mean, Leonard's probably looking for a multi-year deal, and Ngakoue's had 1-year deals the last few years, so he's gotten used to it. If I was a betting man, and I'm not, I'd say one of those 2 will be a Bear shortly. But again, I'm throwing a dart at the wall.
Shower Beer with another question. Now that you know Poles' MO about picking super athletic guys and grading the flashes, that was a great quote that Poles said. He said, we grade the flashes. Do you think that next year?
Let me make one correction on that.
Okay. Sure.
He was specific about defensive linemen with that.
Oh, okay. That's important.
Okay. And you know how I've talked about defensive linemen is that they can run hot and cold. So when you look at the flashes and the flashes are really good, you know he can do it.
Right.
Okay. So now it's get him to do it down after down after down.
Exactly. So the question finishes with, do you think you'll have a better idea of which guys could be prioritized on his board next season when looking at future draft picks?
Well, I haven't, I've done probably 140, 150 guys, but some were true freshmen last year, so they won't be in there. See, now the agents are the reason I'm done so many so far is NIL. and they were, so they can represent them for NIL, and then that's going to carry over into the contractual thing after they get drafted. So they're recruiting them a lot earlier. And I had a conversation with Rosenhaus just last week, and he says, Greg, I'm starting them in high school now. He's starting to try to recruit kids as juniors in high school. And he said, will I miss on some? Sure. But if I can get all these kids or highly recruited kids, I got a chance.
Cool. Let's see. Again, Chase Young is on everybody's mind, but that's not going to happen, right?
Well, I mean, you don't know. Could he become available next year as a free agent? Yes. First of all, you've got to find out about his health. So nobody was going to trade a pick for 23 for a maybe. Because a trade is contingent upon the player passing the physical. So and he had, from what I understand, a pretty catastrophic knee injury and an intense surgery. So if you made a trade for him and he comes in and the doctors look at him and it's like the guy last year, Ogunjobi, and they got to pass him, then you're losing out on the pick. So if it's a next year pick, if it's this year pick, you would have lost because the pick would have been used. But if you're using next year's pick and he flunks the physical, it voids the trade. You get your pick back. But do they want to trade him? All they did was they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Okay. The New York Giants didn't pick up Daniel Jones' 5th-year option a year ago. And he had a good year, and he struck lottery with, probably got Powerball with that contract. And then another guy was our corner from a few years ago, Kyle Fuller. They didn't pick up his 5th-year contract. He played really well, and then they put the transition tag on, which gave them the ability to match any offer. Green Bay gave him a really high offer at the time, and the Bears matched it. So, he bet on himself. So it doesn't mean he's not going to be a Redskin. Now, in saying that, their other end, I think his name is Sweat.
Sweat.
Yeah, he's up for a contract after this year. I think it's this year. They franchised Payne this year and gave him a big deal, and they gave the other guy, Allen, a big deal 2 years ago. Can they afford 4 monster deals across the defensive line? But again, until you find out how he plays this year and what does that knee look like, I think it's a big question mark.
Yeah. Kind of risky. Let's see.
Well, right now it is. I mean, if you go off his rookie year, you say, I'm going to do it in a minute.
Right, exactly.
But
things have changed.
Didn't play last year.
Exactly. Frank wants to know, do you feel that any of these picks were exceptional picks? And I'll add to that and say, we need blue chip players. Did we add blue chip players in this draft?
Potential, because they're always potential blues.
Right.
They got to do it as pros. Hell, I think the running back they got in the 4th round could be a blue.
I agree.
Okay, that guy's a bitch now. I said it yesterday. Had he not gone to Texas, or had he not have to back up Bijan Robinson, this guy would have run for 1,500 to 1,800 yards and gone in the 2nd round. Yep. Not a question about it. And so, and now when you think about it, he's never carried the ball. He's had, when you include receptions, he's had over 100 touches, but he's never carried the ball more than 100 times in a season. I think the most was 95. Those are brand new tires still.
Exactly.
It's not like when we took Sed, it was touching the ball 250 times a year. So, and with running backs, you only get so many carries and the legs start to go.
Okay. I'm being told I made a mistake with that last question. I don't think that was the question from Frank, where any players selected exceptions. I believe that is what he was asking Frank Hex. Please clear it up. Okay. I'm not quite sure I understand, but apparently I made a mistake, and I apologize for that. That's 3. Should I leave? No, I'm not leaving. All right. Next question. Let's see if I can get this one right. Taurine Whitfield wants to know that Brad Spielberger tweeted at 4 p.m. that teams can sign a veteran free agent today. What will we have someone signed at 4:01 p.m.? That is interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't know there was a freeze until 4 o'clock. I think, as far as I know, you can sign them right now. And maybe there was a hold over draft weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a deal.
Mm-hmm.
You could make a deal yesterday. A signing is when it's official. So you could make a deal and announce it at 4:01.
Mm-hmm.
That if that's the case, that's something new, because I know twice when I was here, we signed veterans during the draft.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. I'll
have to look at Brad's tweet and see exactly what he said.
Okay, let's see. How about Leo? Leo, is, in your opinion, other than quarterback pressure, what were the biggest weaknesses in the Bears defense last season?
Injuries in the secondary,
mm-hmm.
and no pressure in the front line. I think so. And it wasn't even sacks; it was pressures too.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the run. I mean, the defense is the scheme is a very sound scheme.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't play very good. They played better when Roquan was here. And then when he left, they went downhill. But they just didn't have enough depth up front, both inside and outside. They got nothing from outside. And so I think that's why I say I'm positive. I bet a lot of money that they're going to sign a veteran edge, because they don't have enough right now. I mean, when you look at the sack numbers from the guys, the Walker is the biggest sack guy. He got 7 or 7.5 last year, and he really can play inside or outside. Mm-hmm. He's not a speed rusher. They don't have that real fast guy coming off the edge. Could it be Robinson? Yeah, but he's going into a second year, and hell, he only played 1.5 years at defensive end in college. So he's still raw and still learning. And I'm not saying he can't get it done, and he might take a huge jump. But can you bet on that yet? I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
You got to see it.
Right.
You got to see it.
Right. Correction on that Brad tweet. What Swifty's saying is that Brad tweeted players can be signed without affecting the compensation pick formula after 4 p.m. today. That's what was meant.
Okay. Well, with the Bears, that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not getting a comp pick. They had the big contract to Edmund. Yeah, they've already had big contracts. So it's not happening with the Bears. They could, they picked up that late 7th when they gave out, and that's because they didn't have enough comps. And so now they go to start with the worst team.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where their record is next year, or no, I was going to say even Carolina, but that won't count because the pick would be a 7th round pick, and it's not going to have any effect on Carolina's 1st round pick. So yeah, they're going to be a better team this year. But I mean, even if they became a 500 team and they didn't have enough comp picks to spread around, it's only going to go to one or two teams, and that's the worst two teams.
Sophisticated asked, the Bears have put themselves in place to have a top 10 linebacker room, a top 10 running back room, and possibly a top 10 wide receiver room. What does Greg think about his proclamation?
What's my proclamation?
No, not your proclamation, his proclamation that
okay.
top 10 linebacker, running back, and wide receiver room.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
No, I think right now the wide receiver room is very underrated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still too many people out there bitching. And my good friend Mike Mulligan was saying today on the radio when I was going to the gym, we can say that Pittsburgh won that trade. No, they didn't. It's an incomplete grade. That trade was not made for 2022. That trade was made for 2023 and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Given when it was made right at the trade deadline. And so, based on last year, and he was hurt, and Justin got hurt, and they never got together, got on the same page. Yeah, you could. It's fair to say that Pittsburgh won that. But what if Clay Chasepool comes up and he has 65 or 70 receptions and 10 touchdowns this year? Now,
exactly.
who won the trade?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so but some people, and I've said this before, and I tweeted it out today, said they want instant gratification and they don't have the patience to wait for it to complete itself.
Indeed. In fact, there was a question about that. Let me go to that now. Does the slow rebuild theory feel more like an excuse from Ryan Poles so he can extend his days as GM? NFL has proven not to be a slow rebuild sport in the past years. Your thoughts?
Oh, I don't agree with his thought at all. That is, he was given a poor roster. He gets here in January.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of players under contract for big money that really didn't. And he looks at the analytics of some of that stuff too. So that, money versus production, but also injuries versus age.
Mm-hmm.
So now you get guys like Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack started this year off great, this past year off great for the Chargers, but he didn't finish it off great. He hits a wall midway through the year, every year, because his body has just been beat up so much.
Right.
And Quinn did nothing all year after having 18 and a half sacks the year before. So these were contracts, he looked at it and he'd go, okay, the smart money says these guys aren't going to be doing anything for us
mm-hmm.
in the near future. I got to get rid of them. And he got assets to get rid of them. And actually pretty good ones when you look at, how those guys played. And Quinn didn't do anything for Philadelphia and they're not re-signing him. Mm-hmm. So he might not even be in the league this year. So it's, it's all relative, and a lot of it has to do with ownership. And I think ownership stands firmly behind him. I got to say one thing, though. I noticed this year, and I think I'm going to write it when I write my article for Windy City tomorrow. I'm going to mention it in the article.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all the years I was in that draft room there, and, Ted was there. Ted never once got on the phone with the guy we drafted. It was our draft, and he understood that. Kevin Warren got on the phone with every single guy
to congratulate them, to
yes,
welcome.
It was the only people who talked to him. I made the call. Jerry didn't even talk to him. I made the call. Then Lovey talked to him. Then the position coach talked to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry would talk to him when they got here. But here, Ryan made the call. Then Flus talked to him, and then Kevin Warren. So that was just a change in protocol within the room.
Andrew Littlefield, since Bears are banking on their coaching staff to develop guys with upside, which players from last year's draft do you expect to make the biggest jump in 2023?
Oh, Jesus, my old brain might not even be able to remember all the names.
Well, how about Kyler Gordon? Because
Kyler Gordon, I think, is going to make a huge jump. He made a huge jump the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
The guy I'm hoping will make a big jump is Dominique Robinson.
Nice.
Number one, it's a position of need. Number two, he's got the raw talent. What he didn't have was the strength and the know-how.
Mm-hmm.
Because, he comes into college as as a quarterback, and then he's a wide receiver, and then he gets moved over to the defensive side of the ball. So he's still learning that part of the game. But the natural traits are there for him to really jump.
What do you think about Velus Jones Jr.?
I think Velus is going to take a jump too. But, I think he's always going to have some. Well, I got to correct that. Not that he's going to have some limitations, but they've added guys that are just better, period. So that's going to, he's going to be a gadget guy that can be a pretty valuable gadget guy. Probably won't see as many touches as Tariq Cohen did, but, if you can get him 10 touches a game, between returns and catches and maybe some runs, he's going to make some big plays because he's got that juice.
J-Rock asks, with 10 sacks from the defensive line last year, do you trust that the defensive line coach Travis Smith to develop and get production from these young defensive linemen?
I'm going to answer it this way. You can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Yeah, there was a lot of chicken shit on the roster last year.
That roster along the defensive line was terrible. And you're supposed to have a quality guy in Quinn, and he just didn't buy in.
Right.
Okay, how do you drop from 18 and a half sacks to 1?
Right.
In 1 year. So he just shut it down. And, then they trade Mac. Some guys get dinged up. They didn't have any money to go out and spend in free agency. They had a very limited amount of cash to go out and get people. So I think, there's a lot of things that played into that. This guy's got a good reputation. Marinelli jumped on the table for him. And if Marinelli says that, I'm all in because I know Marinelli really well.
Excellent. Well, one guy regarding the question about making a jump this season, Ja'Tyre Carter's name comes up a lot because of his potential and the fact that he's been at House Hall all off season working out. You like this guy, right?
Yeah, no, he's athletic. He's strong. He played at an HBCU school, and nothing against him, but they're not getting the coaching he would have gotten at. He played at a low-level FCS school and played pretty damn good. But now he's jumping up, not one level, he's jumping up 2 levels of comp, and he got to play some. Didn't play badly. This should be the year your big jump is year 1 to year 2. So if he's something, that could be, you're going to see it this year. And I'll tell you what, and I'm throwing the guard at the wall here. It wouldn't shock me if they even try his ass at center. Even though, he was a tackle at Southern University. He's too short to play tackle. In the NFL, he's 6'3". He got some reps at guard last year. Didn't play bad. I mean, he is strong as an ox now. and he is athletic. Go back to what we've talked about before. This guy had mid-major basketball offers coming out of high school as a frickin' point guard at about 250, 255, and now he's probably 305. That tells you how athletic he is. So, I don't know anything about how intelligent he is, instinctive. You want a smart guy at the center position. We know Dieter Iceland, who went to an Ivy League school, has worked some at center. I'd be in, once they get into OTAs and then into camp, be interesting to see if they work him at all at center.
Yeah. As Sam says, if Carter can play center, our line would now be set for the next several years. All right.
I'm going to tell you, he isn't going to be a starter. He isn't going to be a starter this year. And the only reason I say that is you've got really one veteran on the line, and that's the guy they brought in free agency. He's playing right guard. Tevin's a young guy. You got a second-year guy who played at the FCS level, played every snap last year, in Braxton Jones. You got right at the right tackle. You got too many young guys. You got to have that veteran in the middle, and who they say is the glue of the offensive line. So, unless it's hypothetical that he even gets tried at center, I mean, he'd have to be head and shoulders above either Patrick or Whitehair to be considered for that spot.
All right.
But that doesn't mean he can't be 1 year away.
Exactly. Develop. I love this question from James Ford because it came up on Saturday. Jordan and Danny, who were providing outstanding coverage of the draft picks, quibbled a little bit with the defensive scheme that the Bears run, saying that it's old. And so James asked, what do you think about the people saying that they think this defensive scheme is old?
Well, they're always making tweaks. I don't agree with that. It's a very sound scheme. There's still a lot of people playing it. They're going to play different versions of it. And you might change your profiles a little bit. It's a very sound 4-3 scheme, but you got to have the right personnel for it to work.
Right. Well,
that's the same thing. I mean, if you're running a 3-4, you got to have the right personnel for it to work.
One of the examples of how it's been tweaked is during Lovey's tenure, this cover 2 1.0, as I think you've named it. The most important players, the top 3 important players, are different than the top 3 important players in this cover 2 3.0. For lack of a better way of putting it, the quarterback is not.
The 3 technique is always going to be in there. It's always been the will linebacker. But who got all the frickin' money?
The middle linebacker.
Yeah, Edmonds the Mike. Follow the money.
Yeah.
With Lovey, it was the safety next. With Flus, it's the nickel. And it's because they're playing nickel so much and what the nickel is being asked to do. But the difference between Lovey and Flus is that Flus's variation is more sophisticated. They do more as far as different coverages, different blitzes, that type of thing. And so it's Ballard explained it to me. He goes, if Lovey's 101, then Flus is 303 or maybe even 404. The way he runs the scheme and what he's asking the players to do.
Yeah. I don't think that's a fair criticism to say this defensive scheme is old at all, because it is constantly being refined. I think what's important is, and I've learned this from you, Greg. I posted a clip from one of your videos where you highlighted what the responsibilities are of the defensive linemen and that they line up in these gaps. And I think that's the key. You know, you've got to have the 3 tech, you've got to have that disruptor, and everything starts to spread out from there and work better. So, and I don't think that's ever going to change, frankly. But Ramsey wants to know, he thinks that it appears the Bears draft for traits on defensive line, size and length versus tape and production. In your experience, which generally works out best? I will be interested.
No, I don't think it's a lockdown. I think it's more of a combination of the two.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you know, they're looking for competitive nature. I mean, you got to have the traits. You can't play without the traits.
Right.
Okay, so, but your play, you're going to have the greatest traits in the world. Hey, if I wanted a fast receiver, I could have signed Carl Lewis back when he was fastest man in the world. That didn't mean he could catch a football.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, San Francisco 49ers signed Ronaldo Nehemiah, who was a hurling champ, Olympic hurling champ. He couldn't catch a cold in winter. So, you know, so it's all relative. I mean, yeah, you got to have the traits, but you got to be able to play too.
Mm-hmm. John says,
in other words, don't read too deep into what you're seeing. They're looking for specific traits,
right?
But it never takes away from productivity.
Yeah, fair enough. John says his observation of the Tampa 2 is that the center of the field has a lot of holes. That's why that middle linebacker is so important, like Urlacher is. He takes care of the center of the field.
And Edmonds, and I've seen every game he's played, being that I'm a Buffalo Bill fan, and he was a little raw. He came out young. He was just a 20-year-old rookie, and just turned 20 going into that season. And he made some mistakes. Wasn't as instinctive as you'd want. But my God, I remember saying to a friend of mine who lives in Buffalo, watching their games last year, I said, the most improved player on that defense is Edmonds. I said, he's become a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, his instincts, his ability to anticipate are way up here now. And in coverage, he is like Brian. He takes away the middle of the field, that short middle of the field. And it's tough to pad. You got a guy who's 6'5", who's got real long arms.
Mm-hmm.
You got to change the trajectory of your ball just because he's there.
Exactly. All right. Squeegee has an interesting question. You studied Lucas Patrick.
About one more. I got to pick up my grandson.
You got it. Lucas Patrick, you studied his tape when he was at Green Bay playing the center position. Do you think he's better at center than Cody Whitehair?
Well, in all fairness, I don't remember much about Cody Whitehair at center anymore. I mean, it's been a few years. He had a problem snapping the ball to Mitch, but he never had a problem before that. And then they changed his technique. Which is funny because now I watch guys how they snap in that shotgun, and a lot of them snap the way that he changed to, where they're holding the top of the ball instead of the side of the ball, gripping it differently. If they got a problem, his problem wasn't blocking. His problem was actually the snap. And so if that's corrected, there shouldn't be a problem, because as a blocker at that position, he was pretty damn good.
Yep. All right. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to finish up a couple of things here and tell our fans that we're going to have a primetime special on Wednesday.
Yes, we is.
All right. We are going to talk undrafted free agents. We are going to, like Swifty and a number of other people said, they cannot wait for you to study the tape on Bell, because they believe that he's got some Henry Melton in him, somebody that you know very well. So you can make that comparison for us on Wednesday. We've got a lot more football.
Which player?
Travis Bell, the Kennesaw State kid.
Oh, okay. Well, I got to get that. I still might not.
Okay, and I'll see from my sources.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get. I don't have it. I got a Google file from all the stuff I got from the East-West game, and on some of these small schools, I got nothing.
Yeah, it's hard to get.
So, and it's because they weren't prospects for the East-West game.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to see if Eric has any, and if he has any, it might be a couple days before he even gets it to me. So I can't promise you that one, but I'll have it sooner or later.
All right. Well, and I'll look at my sources too. If I've got any of that tape, I'll get it to you right away. That's it for our show. Thank you very much. We had about at one point almost 500 people watching us live here on YouTube, hundreds more watching us on Twitter, and hopefully all of you will be back Wednesday night. We haven't decided on the start time yet, but it'll be either 6 or 7 Central, something like that. And don't forget to read Greg's articles at windycitygridiron.com. And don't also forget the great program we have here at the Bar Room. The best way to stay on top of it is subscribe to our Bar Room Network channel here on YouTube. You will be alerted on your device every time we go live with a new show. We'll have Southburb's Hitman tomorrow, and of course, Bare Their Souls tomorrow night. Greg, you are the absolute best. Thank you very much, and we will see you all soon.
See you later. Thanks, guys.